Hello everyone, welcome to the Boxing Science Podcast. This is episode 7 and this is the second instalment of our 3-part mini-series on our roundtable discussion about sport-specific strength and conditioning. In this episode we're going to be talking about the strength and conditioning coach's role within like a training camp setting. So when we go away, whether that's a remote training camp, a warm weather training camp, or like leading up towards a fight, whether a boxer is fighting overseas. We've got some fantastic experience here. We've got Alan Ruddock that went away with Kell Brook and the Ingle Gym back in 2014 when he went and beat Sean Porter in LA. We've got Dan Lawrence that's been out to Vegas and LA with other boxing champions. We've got Gary Hutt that is with GB Boxing, obviously going out away to different tournaments and different training camps. And I share some experience as well when I've been away to different training camps, warm weather in Fuerteventura, away in Dubai, Japan and Chicago as well. If you're interested in hearing the first episode of this 3-part mini-series where we talk about exercise selection in strength and conditioning, go check that out. And please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future episodes. So let's get on with the topic, a strength and conditioning coach's role within a training camp setting. I'm going to move on to topic number 2, which is a strength and conditioning coach's or sports scientist's role within a training camp. This can be either just when we're at home, when they're at the local gym, or when we're actually out on training camp. So, talking to Gary about the time in Kazakhstan. Dan's been out to Vegas twice, but I'm going to start off with Alan Ruddock because Alan, you was probably the first out of all of us to go out and do a training camp. You was thrown out of the lab into the mad world of the Ingle Gym training camp out in Vegas and LA for Kell Brook in 2014. What were the key roles that you undertook and what were the kind of challenges that you faced when you was out there?
Key roles, gosh, I reckon the first thing I thought of was I thought back for a presentation that I'd heard a couple of years back by a physiologist called David Martin, who was working at the Australian Institute of Sport at the time. And he was giving a presentation on sports science in general. And his concluding remarks were something around you're not just the data guy. You're not just that guy that collects GPS if you work in football, or you're not the guy that just analyzes the power data if you work in cycling, or you're not just the person that analyzes speed if you're a running coach. You've actually got a really important role to play in relaying and transitioning important information from the coach and the athlete and integrating that information into the program. And most athletes will see you as a central part of that program, especially if you've got good experience of doing that and you can communicate that with your athletes. And they'll often see you as a role model and someone who they look up to and someone who you should set benchmarks for them to meet their high performance. And we all know what boxers are like in camp. If they're doing something, if they're on a diet and they're losing weight, they expect you to do the same. So, for example, in Vegas with Kell, if he's been given a certain amount of food, and I'm eating with him, I would eat less than him, and that would show to him that I'm on his wavelength. I'm eating the same or less than him, because I don't really need as much as him, but he's losing weight. And so what I'm doing to him there is I'm setting an example and saying, look, If I can do it, you can do it. The same if there was a session on the treadmill. If the guys were doing it, I'd do it as well. And I would try and test everything out and show them and set the example to them that, it doesn't matter who you are, you can still give this a go, and you can still give 100% effort, and you can know, importantly, how it feels. So that's the approach that I took in to that training camp, is that I'm not just a person on the periphery carrying around a laptop collecting skin temperature data and analyzing it. I'm trying my best to use that insight to integrate within them and to help them understand themselves, whilst also setting an example and being a role model, rather than just taking bits of data here and there and popping in and just doing things when it suits me. It's really important that you have that holistic overall view, that you are integral to the camp and you are important to this, and every single piece of data that you take has to mean something to the guys as well, and you're really important to help them bridge that gap and help them understand themselves a little bit better.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic opportunity for practitioner to get an understanding, a true understanding what they go through on a day-to-day basis, and not only from training but nutrition as well. I was similar to you. I kind of followed suit from you on training camp. I eat basically what they're eating, maybe a little bit more. I'm only drinking water and doing like training once or twice a day as well. And I'm like thinking, they're on less fuel than me, they're training harder than me, and then I'm still having to get a certain amount out of them. So I think it's a great way to get a better understanding of the athlete. I remember walking, but only to a certain degree, because I was walking down the street in Chicago with Jordan, and me and Jordan we're good mates, as well as coach and athlete, and we're walking down, and I just went, "It's horrible being hungry, isn't it?" And he looked at me like he was going to hit me. I was genuinely scared, and he just went, "You don't even know what hungry means." And and just to get about 10% of kind of understanding what they're going through will have a massive impact on your program, not only in that scenario, but actually at home as well. Tommy, have you left your phone on, mate?
Apologies, I've left my mic on as well. Sorry.
Okay, I'm going to link that in nicely because we've got Dan, who's been to Vegas a couple of times. We've gone from Alan in Vegas. We're going to go to Kazakhstan with Gary, and then we're going to go back to Vegas. We're going to have a nice Vegas sandwich.
I went Benidorm last year, Donny. Don't know if that.
I was just sat here thinking, like, these places that you guys with the pros go to sound lovely. So when I first started, I was thrown off the deep end with GB boxing really when I first started, because after like 3 days of being in the job, I went off to Belarus for a training camp.
Yeah.
Never met the athletes before, never met the coaches before, met them in the airport, really. And yeah, it was like a baptism of fire, but the training environments are very different. And I think I've really enjoyed listening to Alan's reflections there on like the role that the strength and conditioning coach or sports scientist plays in the broader team, and also the kind of dynamics within a camp situation. Like, the tendency for our training camps will be that we'll have between, say, 10 and 25 athletes on a single camp. So it's a little bit different again in terms of the dynamics that you guys face. But a big role in terms of our setup, and something that myself and Michael Hughes, the full-time S&C coach of GB Boxing, are really conscious of, is kind of knowing your place, knowing your role, and knowing what the key deliverables are from you on that camp. What's your minimum viable delivery? What are the things that, if you're going, why are you going on that camp? What's the added value that you're going to add? And what's the expectation that everybody's got of that? Don't try and go outside of your own remit. Do what you're there to do. and support others if they need support, but then also understand kind of that it's an intense environment on a training camp, and it ramps up as you go through, particularly if you're close to fight date, and being able to switch off from the job or release tension or be something else other than just the S&C coach, I think is absolutely a fundamental role. And we talk about it as being, and the support staff at GB Boxing are excellent in terms of that. They are very attuned to the kind of person focused requirements of the trip, rather than just being focused on task. But we're like the glue that support the coaching team and the pressures that they're under, and the athlete and the pressures that they're under, to enable them to get the most out of their training process. So I think then Kazakhstan, like I say, it's a really interesting one to be able to go around the world and see how other countries in the amateur game try and support their boxers. And you always see things that you do yourself which kind of confirms your understanding and makes you feel really good that you're on the right track, or at least you're both on the wrong track. You get to see things that challenge your thinking, and then you get to see things that you've never seen before, and you can take on board and really can try and drive forward. But even the dynamic of the boxers seeing what other countries do and seeing how other countries train and the way that they then view the training that we do is interesting dynamic to try and balance. So like I said, in Kazakhstan, the training gym is probably 70 meters long by about 30 meters, and they share it with wrestling. There's 4 rings in there, and the rest of the space is just open space. And for every single warm-up in a training session, the boxers wrestle and roll around on their head, so that they're warming up the neck, strengthening the neck, and all of those pieces. They obviously, while we're on a training camp, they invite our boxers in to join in. Now, for them, that's like taking a step from sagittal plane strength and conditioning to a whole different world of challenge. And it's interesting to get exposure to that, but also kind of balance the risks that come with that as well. And I think it comes back to where I started in terms of understanding the place, understanding the space, understanding the key deliverables to a camp and what you want to get from it, and then being comfortable to be yourself within that environment, not just the persona that you try and put on as a coach.
Absolutely. I like how you started it there, Gary. Obviously transitioning from Alan's, where it's about like kind of immersing yourself, but you can't do that for 25 athletes, part of a squad, else you'd be running yourself ragged. And I think that's an important point to make, is when I've gone out on training camps, when I went first time, went to Fort Ventura, I literally did everything and tried to, probably overworked myself a little bit. I was training around about 5 or 6 of the athletes, along with Kel. Kel Brook being the main one that I was training and focusing on and trying to monitor. But I also like training Kid Gallard, had Lee Wood in a few sessions, Latif Shafiq, and then obviously Jordan and Kyle Yousaf were there. So I was trying to juggle a few athletes at the same time, and you've got to try and be realistic on the level of service that you can do and really focus on your different priorities. When you go one-to-one with an athlete, so in Chicago with Gav McDonnell, I was analysing his hydration status. So basically I was measuring how much he was having a piss and how often he was and everything like that. I'm managing his water balance throughout the day and his effective water loading. Now, if you were going into a training camp where you've got 5 boxers or even 25 boxers, you've got to be really realistic on what you can actually do. So, yeah, I think that was a great contrast between both Alan and Gary. Dan, I want to bring you in. What's going to be interesting about you, Dan, is the fact that you went out to Vegas in 2015 or 2014 with George Groves. and then like recently you went with John Ryder. There was quite a gap between that. What did you learn from that first camp? What experience have you had over the years, and how did that adapt to your camp with John?
Yeah, good question, Danny. I'm blessed to have a few experiences there. We've had Big Bear twice with George Groves, 2014, 2015. We've done LA training camp last year for John Ryder, and the fight was in Vegas on the Canelo Jacobs card. And I've also had another experience for John's fight with Callum Smith most recently, where we lived in a flat together in London. He got away from the family, hired an Airbnb for 3.5 weeks. He just had a lovely young son, so it wasn't really conducive to one of our big rocks in terms of sleep to optimize performance. So he had to get away from that, and I was cooking for him and doing everything for him. And I think for me, the big thing and my motto has always been is go above and beyond, and I think any one of my fighters will say that I do that. And I think Gary alluded to it there, is we got to look at these individuals as, yes, they are supreme and elite athletes, but treat them as humans first. Okay. So you build relationships with them. And, I've got experiences on fight day with John Ryder. I'm running down Vegas Strip trying to find, the correct gels for him. We brought the SIS gels, but there were some other gels that he wanted. And I don't know if anyone's been to Vegas Strip. It's very hard to cross Vegas Strip. If you see a shop across the road, you've got to literally run around for 30 minutes in the Vegas heat. It was funny because I actually got some brownie points from Tony Sims, because he saw me running. I literally had a keg of water and 2 bags running down Vegas Strip. We were getting picked up in like 20 minutes. And I think I got some brownie points for that one. But it just goes back to saying, no ego. You just got to get on with it and do everything you can for that fighter. Without doubt, we have dual roles. So, whether I'm a strength and conditioning coach or not, I'll be taking care of every other aspect just to make things easier for the fighter. In regards, flip it back around to your question, the difference, I suppose I can talk about it now because he's retired, but George was quite closed in his feelings. And I think boxers as a generalization are, hard work, show no signs of weakness. They may not articulate their message or communicate with you unless you really go under the bonnet and really know that athlete and have been working with them for a while. So, he kept a lot on board that in hindsight, and me now being, I suppose a better practitioner, but also a better communicator. It would have been nice to get a bit more information out of him that I could have then influenced his decision to find out how he really felt. Because I knew certain things, which I won't delve into, weren't right that camp from a stressor point of view. But someone like John Ryder, I'll flip it to him, is that, we get on very well on a human level. He really believes in the value that we're bringing to the table from a high performance program. He's seen and felt the changes, and his performance have shown that as well. So I think he's very much bought into the whole process. I think also is, as much as I say go above and beyond, and you want to be doing as much as you can for the athlete, also know that sometimes silence is okay, and don't speak all the time, like myself now, so apologies, but don't speak all the time. Just sit there, know your role. I think, again, Gary said there, know your role. Yes, we go above and beyond, but also, like, again, in Liverpool, John Ryder, so he's there with Tony Sims, I'm there, I'll bring the water. I'm basically the water boy, to be quite frank, but you got to be, you just got to do all you can. And I sit there and I don't say anything. I'll speak when I'm spoken to, because I know this is a fighter a couple of days before his huge fight, trying to make weight. He's dialing things in technically. He needs to have, from a psychological point of view, a very short, sharp and explosive session to walk away from that to say, right, box ticked, I feel great. Now I recover. Now I weigh in. Now I fight. So don't try and, as much as I say, be busy, don't be too busy. Know your athlete and know your environment is probably what I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been looking at some old videos because obviously I've got more time on my hands at the moment. But on the Cal Brook camp in Fuerteventura 2016, I had my GoPro out for like a lot of the sessions. So there was a lot of raw footage in there. And I'm like cringing on how I was acting there, because I was so outside my comfort zone. I felt like I had to like kind of be like a character and react to things and everything like that, rather than having a more quieter, more calm and collected approach. And when I was in Chicago with the likes of, Gav were fighting, Gav McDonald, but I had Jamie McDonald, Fowler, Jordan Gill. I've travelled halfway around the world with them already that year. So I was like quite like personable with them. They know what my personality is. But there were also obviously Dave Caldwell. Me and Dave get on really well. But it's the first time that like I'd been in the presence of Tony Bellew, and Tony said that towards the back end of the thing, like described what I was like as a person, saying is like cool, calm, collected, quite reserved. And I was just like, that doesn't sound like me, but that's what I wanted to portray. I was keeping my professional hat on, and I was quite proud that that's what he thought of me, rather than kind of what I probably were like in Fuerteventura, where we're trying to be like one of the lads. And when you're part of that collective group and you start getting on with them, you can kind of easily be dragged into that. So I like what you're saying there, Dan, and and what you're saying about George as well. Like if you could go back, and probably you'd try and get a little bit more out of him. There's loads of situations like looking back where on experience where I just think like, I wish I said something there, or I wish I acted it on it there. And through experience, when to act on things and make things happen. You can't, with boxing, one fight can change their trajectory of their career, and you want to give them every possible like opportunity and best chance of winning and performing. So like now, when a situation arises, rather than kind of being quiet and not knowing what to do about it, you make sure that there's an action plan put in place. So I enjoyed that reflection. I could definitely resonate from it as well.
Annie, on that, can I just close up? No rushing for time, but I have three main principles: trust, communication, and respect. You said about being a joker and things like that, and I'm not the joker. It's not in my nature, but I'll absolutely get on with them in a friendship basis. And I get on with them as humans. I enjoy the interaction, providing they adhere to my three main rocks and principles of trust, communication, and respect. I can have a joke with them, but if the lines are getting blurry on my three main rocks, then I have to change the approach slightly. So I think it's just having some boundaries in there,
Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff.
Just one more thing as well, Dan. I know like it's just been burning up a little bit. There's something that goes under the radar in a lot of this in terms of self-care for yourself. How you manage yourself and make sure that you're in the right place to deliver what you need to in at the right time for the athlete. So I just think if we went through a whole discussion of how to manage, like what the role of the S&C coaches in training camps and stuff, it would be an absolute missed opportunity if we didn't talk about how important it is to understand and know how to manage and support yourself to be the best you can be. In and around everything else that's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can be dragged down into, having to do something 24/7, having to be on work, but, we wouldn't be like that at home. We have our home comforts. We get to speak to our family and everything like that. On training camp, really, that shouldn't be no different. You should make sure that you're having that time allocated to give yourself some self-care, and then the kind of the pressures of training camp won't get on top of you as well, because like the back end of training camp, especially if there's a fight added on to the end of that, that's a crucial time where you've got to be 100% focused and on top of your game. If you go in and training like a caveman, eating like a caveman, and not speaking to your family back at home and everything like that, and you stress, you might take your eye off the ball at a very crucial time. Loved all them conversations, guys, because, I'd written down like kind of what kind of tasks can we do in terms of like warm-ups and monitoring and kind of what loads can we take and everything like that. But I think what we covered was the more important aspects of how we manage ourselves in our professional demeanour and how we engage with our athletes as well. So I think that's some fantastic discussions there. So that brings us to the end of this part of the discussion. Some fantastic discussions and reflections on the experiences that have been gained going out on these different training camps. Episode 8 and the third part of this mini-series will include our discussions around sport-specific fitness training. So how does high-intensity interval training meet the demands of boxing training and competitive performance. To make sure that you don't miss out on this episode, please hit the subscribe button and make sure you go and check out our latest episodes of the Boxing Science podcast. We've got some fantastic episodes already done on the science behind boxing, strength training, strategies to employ during lockdown, and also we've got our Q&A sessions as well, where we talk about a range of different subjects. So if you haven't hit that subscribe button, hit it now, and hopefully we'll see you on the next episode.